I had attended 11 first contact ceremonies in my capacity as a junior observer for the Rethali Conclave's Outer Margin Directorate. 11. Each one logged, catalogued, filed in triplicate under the heading First Encounter, Protocol Confirmed. I knew the ritual shape of them the way a ferry pilot knows the shape of a dock, the slow approach, the exchange of frequencies, the long silence while translators worked, the tentative opening of channels. The ceremony of it. The careful, practiced smallness of it. The one with the humans began no differently. I was stationed at the secondary observation gallery of the conclave vessel Rethali, a parliamentary observer ship, unarmed, broad-hulled, built to watch and record rather than to act. We had been positioned at the edge of the Harveth Drift for 6 days, waiting on coordinates the humans had themselves provided through a relay buoy left at the margin of what they called their outer commerce zone. The buoy was small, functional. It broadcast in clean, unornamented code, no flourish, no introduction, just the coordinates and the time window. Our signals team had remarked on it. Efficient people, said Senior Analyst Karev, who had spent 30 years cataloguing alien communication styles. She meant it as a mild compliment. I wrote it in my log as a neutral observation. The human ship arrived 11 minutes inside the agreed window. One vessel. A frigate-class hull by our classification. Modest in scale, perhaps 400 meters stem to stern, wedge-shaped, with a low superstructure and what appeared to be lightly armored plating along the upper decks. Our sensors resolved it cleanly. One ship. No escorts. No trailing formation. No weapons hot. No shields raised. The approach vector was textbook, slow, non-aggressive, perpendicular to neither of our flanks, angled to give us a clear line of withdrawal if we chose to use it. They came alone, said Conclave Delegate Mervet OSS, who was standing beside me in the gallery. She had overseen 4 prior first contact proceedings and carried herself with the practiced calm of someone who had seen every possible variation of the opening ritual. Respectful. I agreed. It was respectful. Considerate, even. One ship, unarmed posture, clean signals, the correct interval of silence before they opened a hailing frequency. When the humans spoke, they spoke in Rethali. Not perfectly, there was a mechanical flatness to the syntax, but clearly, and without error. They had learned our language before asking to speak with us. I wrote that in my log as well. The lead human representative introduced herself as Commander Thessa Voral of the Terran diplomatic frigate Calmwater. She was a compact woman. I could see her on the visual feed, standing at a podium on what appeared to be a small forward briefing room, hands flat on the surface in a posture I would later learn was a deliberate signal of openness, palms visible, nothing concealed. She spoke at measured pace. She said that humanity was pleased to make formal contact with the Rethali Conclave, that they hoped this meeting would be the first step in a relationship of mutual benefit, that they carried no hostile intent and asked for none in return. Delegate Mervet OSS responded in kind. The preamble lasted 40 minutes. I took notes. The language was careful and gracious on both sides. The humans had brought a trade proposal, preliminary in scope, nothing binding, an opening position, and submitted it in a format compatible with Rethali archival systems. Someone on their side had done considerable homework. Analyst Korev, reviewing the submission in real time at the station beside me, kept making small affirmative sounds under her breath. It was, in other words, going well. I remember looking at the frigate on my screen and thinking, so this is them. Terrans. The species everyone in the outer margin had been receiving second-hand reports about for the better part of a decade. Commerce contacts, relay buoy handoffs, the occasional exchange of navigational warnings at contested transit corridors. Industrious, people said. Efficient. Polite at borders. I looked at that single modest ship and thought that the reports fit. One frigate. Clean signals. Trade documents formatted correctly. Palms flat on the table. I thought I understood what I was looking at. Then the relay came in from the Harveth system's inner edge. It arrived on the emergency band, our emergency band, which the humans should not have been able to access, but which they apparently monitored passively, because Commander Voral paused mid-sentence and said, quietly, "We are receiving that as well." The signal was from a Rethali commercial convoy, 3 vessels, transiting the Harveth inner corridor on a scheduled run. They had encountered a Keth-band radar formation, 3 ships, known designation, a predatory configuration that operated in the outer margin with enough regularity that the Conclave had a standing file on them. The convoy was broadcasting in distress. 2 ships had taken minor hull breaches. The third had lost propulsion. The silence on the channel between the Rethali and the calm water lasted perhaps 4 seconds. Commander Voral said, still in the same measured voice, "We'll handle it." Delegate Mervet OSS began to respond, to say that we had a patrol vessel that could be redirected, that we appreciated the offer but did not wish to impose, that perhaps, and that was when the calm water stopped being one ship. I do not have a better way to describe it than that. The frigate's hull did not change. The ship itself remained exactly where it was, holding position, signals nominal, no change in energy signature. But the space around it, the space we had been scanning, continuously, with every passive array the Rethali carried, folded. That is the only word that applies. The readings did not spike or surge. There was no emissions bloom, no distortion wave, no warning that our instruments could have caught beforehand. The space simply resolved differently than it had resolved a moment before, the way a shape hidden in a pattern suddenly becomes visible once someone shows you where to look, and you cannot understand how you missed it. 7 ships. I watched our sensor console cycle through its initial sort the way I had watched it 100 times during training exercises, the automated triage that categorizes contacts by mass, energy signature, and drive configuration and assigns them a threat rating before a human or Rethali analyst can form a coherent thought about what they are looking at. The console sorted all 7 contacts in under 2 seconds. It assigned 5 of them a rating I had never seen generated outside of a classified briefing simulation. The 6th received a rating the console could not fully resolve and flagged with an amber annotation that read, "Classification pending, insufficient reference data." I did not look at the 7th rating. By that point I was no longer looking at the console. 7 ships that had been there, I cannot say for how long. Our post-incident analysis never produced a satisfying answer to that question, and I have been living with the uncertainty ever since. The formation materialized in a rough semicircle around the frigate's stern, their aspect angles arranged in the kind of pattern that takes calculation and coordination to maintain across an extended period of time. They had been holding that formation, while the calm water conducted its diplomatic approach, while Commander Voral stood at her podium with her palms flat on the table, while we exchanged pleasantries about trade routes and archival formatting. They had been there. The largest ship, the one at the center of the formation, flanked by 2 escorts on either side and with 3 more spread wide to either wing, was not a frigate. I had seen images of human warship classifications in the Conclave's preliminary intelligence files. The files were sparse, assembled from long-range observations and the occasional cooperative data share from species who had traded with human space. I had looked at those files 3 days before this meeting and thought I had a reasonable working picture. The ship at the center of that formation did not resemble any classification in those files. It was not a destroyer. It was not a cruiser. It was blocky in a way that spoke not of streamlining but of armor, layered, heavy, practical armor that had clearly been applied over prior damage and reapplied again. Its superstructure was low and wide, bristling along the dorsal ridge with what our sensors were already sorting into ordnance categories before I could finish reading the initial scan. The hull bore markings I couldn't parse, and scoring, long, dark furrows in the plating, that did not look recent. It was already moving. That was the detail that reached me last and sat with me longest. From the moment it materialized on our screens, it was already in motion, the formation pivoting in a long, unhurried arc toward the inner corridor. Not rushing, not scrambling. It moved the way something moves when it has decided, when the internal question of whether to act has already been resolved and what remains is only execution. I realized I had stopped writing in my log. Analyst Korev had stopped making her small affirmative sounds. The entire secondary observation gallery of the Rethali had gone quiet in a way that I recognized, after a moment, as the sound of a room full of people recalibrating something they thought they understood. Commander Voral's voice came back over the channel. She had not changed her tone. I want to be precise about this, because I have recalled it many times, and each time I recall it, the unchanging quality of her voice is the thing that stays with me most clearly. She sounded exactly as she had when she was discussing archival formatting. I apologize for the interruption to our discussions, Delegate. We will return to the trade proposal as soon as the situation in your inner corridor is resolved. Estimated transit time is 41 minutes. The convoy will be escorted back to the Harveth relay point. Delegate Mervet OSS said, very carefully, "Of course." There was a pause. Then Mervet said, "Commander, I wonder if I might ask, the vessels that have joined your formation, were they present at the time of our initial contact?" Another 4-second silence. Then Commander Voral said, Yes. For how long? Since before we entered the system. Delegate.
I lukt at marev oss.
She was a woman who had attended 4 first contact proceedings, who had managed trade negotiations with 6 distinct alien polities, who was known in the conclave for a composure that younger delegates studied as a professional model. She was standing very still. Her primary and secondary hands were both at her sides, which was not her habitual posture. She said, "I see." It took the Dreadnought and its escorts 38 minutes to reach the inner corridor, resolve the radar contact, and return an escort signal to the convoy. I know this because I was watching the sensor returns the entire time, unable to look away, while the channel between the Revet Selene and the calm water remained open and Commander Voral answered Mervet's remaining questions about the trade proposal with the same unhurried patience she had shown throughout. When the convoy was secured and the formation began its return arc, Mervet Oasis folded her notes, a physical habit, an old one. I had seen her do it dozens of times, and looked at me. "Savan," she said, "update your observer's log." I looked at my screen. The log entry I had started at the beginning of the encounter still had the heading, "First Encounter, Protocol Confirmed." I stared at it for a moment. Then I deleted the word confirmed and sat there, cursor blinking, trying to think of the right word to put in its place. What I had been watching, for the past 3 hours, was not the thing I had been watching. The frigate, the single, modest, respectful frigate, had been the face that humanity put at the table. Palms flat. No weapons hot. Trade documents in correct archival format. Everything you would want a first contact to look like, delivered precisely as well as anyone could have delivered it. And behind the face, holding position in the dark, waiting without any particular urgency for a reason to become visible, 7 ships. The smallest of them outmassed anything in a standard Rethali patrol formation. The largest I still did not have an adequate classification for. They had not hidden them to deceive us. I came to understand that much later, after the Conclave's Intelligence Directorate had spent considerable time working through the implications. The formation had not been concealment as hostility. It had been the same thing the Calmwater's single-ship approach had been, consideration. 1 ship at the table, so we would not feel pressured. 7 ships in reserve, so that if anything went wrong, for us, or for anyone else in the system, it would not go wrong for long. The distinction felt important. I was not sure, sitting in that gallery with my cursor blinking, whether it made the thing I had just learned more or less difficult to absorb. I thought about the relay boy. Small. Functional.
No flerist.
Efficient. I thought about Commander Voral saying we'll handle it the way a person says I'll get the door. I thought about the 11 prior first contact ceremonies I had attended, each one logged under first encounter, protocol confirmed, each one a record of something I had believed I had seen clearly. I thought about how certainty accumulates, how you attend enough ceremonies, record enough protocols, and begin to believe that you understand the shape of the thing, that the ritual of contact is the thing itself rather than a surface resting on top of something else entirely. The humans had not given us anything false. Every word Commander Voral said was true. The trade proposal was real. The palms flat posture was genuine. One could not call any of it deception. One could only call it, I sat with the word for a long time, incomplete. I typed a single word into the header field of my log. Updated. Then I closed the entry, opened a new one, and started writing from the beginning, as carefully as I could, everything I thought I had understood about humanity before the Calmwater stopped being 1 ship, so that whoever read the file after me would know exactly what the Rethali Conclave had thought it was looking at, and how completely, and how quietly, we had been wrong.